females in the crowd. Do I seem to overpower you while I'm standing here up in the stand? When you talk to your male classmates around, do they always try to be dominant in your conversations with them? And also, did we males, also in the ones in the class, did we interrupt you when you guys were speaking up front here? Alright, so my refutation topic would be socialized male speech. 2 weeks ago, there was a major claim made that women are constantly overpowered by men through speech, and the point being made was male speech dominance begins with the way girls are taught. Men interrupt and undermine women, and it is untrue that women talk more than men. I'd like to inform you that this certain claim is precisely incorrect, mainly due to the hasty generalization it makes inside the argument, and it also makes assumptions and stereotypes within. In case you failed the quiz on Tuesday about the hasty generalization, a hasty generalization is drawing a conclusion of a population without taking a proper large enough sample, in other words, making an assumption without having proper evidence or representation of the said population. So the first point, male speech dominance begins with the way girls are taught. In their third point, there was big support from a Huffington Post journalist named Soraya Chemeli, who, on a side note, is actually a feminist, so some of her points that she makes might be a little biased towards men. So, quoting the speech from 2 weeks ago, as a young girl, you are told to act like a lady, be polite, and not to interrupt. While boys, on the other hand, are just bullying boys if they exert act of bluntness or speak when they are supposed to. This is kind of odd to start with the argument that's trying to attack the stereotype that women are sometimes talk too much. But then here they're placing a stereotype on males that they're just being boys, and all of them are completely blunt, and that all girls are always going to be perfect and polite. That's always untrue, because not everyone's the same, and we're not always going to act the same towards our other peers. There's also no evidence made on how the males are always being left off the hook, because personally, I've always been taught to be polite, no matter if it's a female, an animal, or a male, whoever. I've always been taught, and I'm pretty sure some of you males alike have always been taught. So we're not always all blunt. Chemeli also makes a generalization that just because she was raised polite and gained an award for being polite in her high school, and her brother didn't receive anything at all for being respectful and polite, doesn't mean that all families work this way. Point number 2, men interrupt and undermine women. First-hand experiences were provided in the past speech that from Rebecca Solnit and Barbara Barnes that were not proper studies, and they just tagged males. They just tagged all males just for some one-time experiences. Going back to the Rebecca Solnit's experience, she said that she went to a bar and that she was interrupted by a male about her book she was writing. And then the male interrupted and saying, "Oh, this book was great," and at the end it came out that it was actually the book of the lady she was speaking with. And just because of this certain experience, it was used as a backup to say that all men just like to interrupt in conversations. These experiences with these males may have been useful to use against that certain male for being interrupted, but they can't be used for the whole said population. There's also another statement that was provided that in a tech place that more males talked more in that area than women. It says that now some of you may think that, well, because it's a tech place that there ought to be more men anyways. Wrong. And then they provided evidence from Christina Paznis about how many the bachelor's degrees women got in 2014. I don't know why they will add this sort of evidence to the speech, because adding how women receive more bachelor's degrees than men doesn't really relate to how more men talk in a tech place than women, because not every woman that going to get a bachelor's degree are always going to end up in that said tech place. Point 3, it isn't true that men talk more than women. In the first sentence of their speech, they said, "We have all either been taught or have been around the theory that women talk more." I don't really approve of using the word theory in this speech, Because theory, using the word theory just pretty much means that they're accepting that, they're accepting of the theory, because theory is a collection of ideas, of an idea that was further proved with observations, experiments, and using the word just pretty much means that they're kind of accepting that women talk more. If she said the assumption of women talk more would have been a better word to use during this certain point. It's also stated that words that also in the speech, words spoken by both females were relatively the same in a study of Scientific American. They made a study of who talked more, and they said they were relatively the same. I went back to that same source, and I got this quote from the article. But in the end, the sexes came out just about and even in daily averages. Women at 16,215 words, and men at 15,669. I'm not sure if 500 words means that much of a difference to you, but if this passage still has proper evidence that males and females talk the same, then I just want to let you know that this study isn't really representative of the population, because it was done only at the University of Texas at Austin, not the whole male population that's currently in the world. So in conclusion, males being seen as dominant in nothing but a mere generalization, since the studies done and experiences given are not complete representative of the whole male population. Every individual, specifically males, act differently due to personality, and placing the label of men acting like alphas is just as bad as placing a label that women talk too much. Thank you.
You have an outline that goes with this?
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. Just want to make sure you get some grade for that. I like the rhetorical question you have at the beginning as an attention device that also kind of demonstrates the very issue that we're talking about. So that worked well. I thought that you kind of previewed your argument, suggesting that the primary problem here is based on hasty generalization and stereotyping, and that is just as problematic as in her presentation as it is in the arguments that she's making. And I thought that was an interesting approach, and it sounds pretty forceful. You come back to that at the end also, and I thought that was a good way to kind of finish off, so it gives your position a little bit more holistic response to what is being presented, instead of just picking it, some of the reasoning processes. It's really, this is the whole juxtaposition of the argument, is that the advocate is basically making the same kind of assumptions in the opposite direction as she claims is being made in the first place. I like that. You signpost on the first point pretty well, and you kind of give us an explanation about why there might be a problem with this research, or with this particular quote. There's kind of a criticism. I don't know about the fact that the author's a feminist, that automatically makes it a little bit less likely. But it might suggest, for instance, that they are sensitive to things that the rest of us don't particularly see as being problematic. So I don't know that it's this. You don't want to dismiss the person as being a feminist, but you might want to suggest that their point of view is influenced here by an ideology or a point of view that directs them to something that the rest of us don't perceive as being problematic. And I think that's where there's a good argument to be made. And then there's this question about diversity of the population. And you say, look, you've got a singular example that's being used here. Can you really reason from that? She's just using her own experience about how she was taught. How does that reflect the rest of the world in any way? And then you use your own personal example. I said, if by that standard, let me tell you how I was raised. And I thought that that was a pretty good answer on that particular point. There's probably some additional information out there that either side could have used in making the argument, but neither side presented it on this particular point. On the interruption thing, I thought that you had a pretty good response here. On the tech talk part, I thought you missed an opportunity. You did make an argument that says, well, how does having a bachelor's degree apply to this particular field? Immediately, the thing that popped into my head, both when I heard the original argument and when I heard your response, was, well, what is the preponderance of people in that particular field? My guess is that if you look statistically at people who are in the STEM fields, you're going to find that women do not represent a substantial part of the people working in that industry. And so it might be very hard to make the inference that's being described by the advocate in this situation. Their response might be, well, then that's the source of the problem, is that there isn't enough diversity in that. And then the question becomes, well, why is it that that is the issue? Has it got anything to do with language, or has it simply got to do with other cultural issues? I think you could maybe make that argument. But I think you had the right press here, that you're challenging the reasoning process, and I thought there were good reasoning challenges on all of those particular points. On the Scientific American evidence, I think you've got a reasonable argument to make this as well. If there is any significance here, the study did find that women did talk slightly more, but again, it's still not very representative. The challenge that is just at the University of Texas at Austin, that's by the way true for almost all social research, because it almost always says, what is our population? It's this group of, freshman or sophomore level psychology students who are taking these classes. They're the ones that get subjected to all that kind of research. So it's kind of a generic answer on that point. All right, thank you.